Folks, please continue to enjoy your dinner. We're going to begin our program, so feel welcome to eat, and there's plenty of food left. Feel welcome to get up and get a drink if you like. I want to first start by making a couple of introductions because we've had some additions to our groups, and some of you may have been here last. And I first want to recognize Carol Walden. Carol's in the back. Carol organized all of this, so we wouldn't be here. Yeah, we should give Carol. Carol joined our group beginning of the year and has just done a phenomenal job setting up review meetings with all of you, setting up these events, our educational forums, these web presentations. So I wanted Carol to be here so you could put a name to a face. And Paul Fivaranti, Paul's taking pictures, but Paul's also helped our group. One of the things we're going to share with you tonight are our efforts in social media. One of the things that we have been making a concerted effort with this year is to connect with you all, but also with your adult children on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And that's been a way we've already had a number of very positive dialogues and informational educational exchanges. And so Paul's got a skill set that is, well over my head in terms of how all that works. And so I appreciate what you're doing for our group, Paul. So today is a very special day. When we planned this meeting back in May, we got a sense at that time that rates were beginning their moves up, and I knew the speaker I wanted to get, and I knew how hard it was to pin him down, so the one day he had available was September 11th, and while that wasn't my first choice, we wanted to take him while his schedule was free. I knew somebody else would fill him up, but September 11th is what an important day it is in our country's history. I know all of us in this room remember where we were on 9/11. And for those of us in the financial industry, many of us knew people in those towers. So I thank you all for joining us here. And I guess when I woke up this morning, the first thing I thought of is how fortunate we are to live in a great free country like we live in today, and how our country's helping others enjoy freedoms around the world. So thank you for spending part of your Patriot Day with us. I want to do more than share with you. Many of you have been asking, how's the transition going and how's the movement going? And I don't even want to talk about numbers. We're well beyond 90% of our clients have allowed us to continue the relationship here at Hightower that we've moved from Merrill Lynch. But that's not what I'm excited about telling you. What I want to share with you tonight is the enthusiasm that my team and I feel, the rejuvenation that we feel in the last few months. The first meeting with you was really just kind of getting the accounts over, getting everything squared away. But in the last few months, we've been updating your financial plans. We've been using a tool now that has a lot more detail in terms of inflation adjustments and cash flow what-ifs, and enabling you to really pinpoint with greater specificity your retirement income, cash flow goals, and your wealth transfer goals. And I'm excited about the tools that we're using. The performance monitoring tool, we're now pulling in all of your outside accounts so that when we look at your holdings, we're truly for the first time looking at the entirety of your financial affairs, not just the assets that we're supervising. And I believe that is what a financial advisor should do. Not just guide you on the investments that we're being compensated on, but our job is to give you holistic advice, and we are doing that. I feel so good about the changes we've been making in some of your portfolios. We've been moving out of more expensive mutual fund investments where we had fewer choices before, and using more low-cost institutional share funds and index funds because it's the right thing to do for you. We're not limited by a menu of choices that investments that had to be on the menu or weren't allowed on the menu. We now have autonomy to pick and choose from the very best performing investments regardless of their source. And so this is evidencing itself in lower fees and better performance. And Frank and Norm and Kim and Kathy, Don and I feel very good about that. I'm enjoying the ability to go through third-party money managers and vet and screen and go through a much more thoughtful, diligent screening process using tools that we didn't have access to before, to pick and choose and select the very best managers based solely on their performance. And we're showing you real positive changes that are having an impact on the portfolio's performance. I'm enthusiastic about what we're doing with social media. So many of you over the years when we asked, what can we do to help you? What else can we do to serve you? You've said, help us educate our adult children, our 20 and 30-something children on matters of finance. That's important to us. And we're using these tools, LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook, putting out content. Tonight's presentation is streaming live, and by tomorrow morning we'll be on all of those channels for people who are not able to make it this evening. Part of how I felt the last few years, I felt like a salesperson, and perhaps that didn't come through to you in our meetings, but I feel now like a consultative advisor. I feel like we're bringing you solutions and ideas that we could not bring you before. And I'll tell you, 21 years doing what I'm doing, I feel like a rookie again. I feel enthusiasm, I feel an energy that I can't even describe in terms of what's ahead of us. The ability to educate you more on questions you're bringing to our attention about Social Security what-if planning and Medicare planning. We now have resources and tools that we didn't have before to help you in this regard. So I'm excited about the future, and but more importantly, I feel that we are in a better position. This has always been a helping profession, a serving profession, and I feel more in a consultative, serving role to you than I have felt in many, many, many years. I want to talk about how excited we are about our new office space. We're doing a walkthrough Friday, so I can tell you I'm not thrilled about all the dealings with contractors and architects and picking out stainless steel microwaves versus glass top microwaves. That's not been too fun, but we're going to be at 656 East Sweetsford Road, which is right at the intersection of Old Eagle School and Sweetsford Road. We're all the 202 and 76 and 476. We chose that building because of its convenience and ease of access. And we're being told, there's some wood around here, that October 25th, we're going to knock on wood as our date. And so, look for a welcome reception, an open house sometime in the fourth quarter, early first quarter. But we're going to have beautiful conference rooms and tables again, and no more squeezing through the halls of the Regis facility. And I know that Kim, Kathy, Donna, Lorraine are very excited about that. We've got some neat things coming up as well. So a week from Friday, on September 20th, I love the events that we do. I like planning. I like doing educational forums, insightful events where you get information from us, and hopefully on topics that are beyond investments. And my favorite event that we do of the year is on the 20th of September. So we are doing a day of service at the Good Samaritan Shelter in Phoenixville. This is a homeless shelter for men and women that my family and I began helping out in years ago. And when I go there, I feel so blessed. You don't realize when you work with dollar signs all day long and you see lots of zeros behind account balances, you sometimes lose perspective. And when I go and I meet with these homeless men, and we do mock job interview skills, and we talk about beefing up their resume and how to do job searches online, or sometimes I go and run errands for them, or sometimes I go and rake leaves. But we're going to work as a team. All 8 of us are going to go to the shelter and invite you to come and join us. And so, again, I can't tell you what you might be doing. You might be painting a fence, you might be putting up drywall, you might be pulling weeds, but we're going to have fun for a few hours serving, and then we're going to take you all to a very nice dinner. Phoenixville has some great restaurants, and Marley's is one of our favorites, so we're going to take you all to a nice dinner on September 20th, so feel welcome to join us. November 7th is a Thursday night, and we've got a great presentation for you. Dr. Paul Violas is one of the country's foremost authorities on security and protection for wealthy families. So we planned this beginning of the year, but Dr. Violas is a frequent contributor to New York Times and Washington Post and speaks on CNN. And he's going to do a private briefing for our families on how do you protect yourself online? How do you protect yourself on social media? How do you make sure all your banking affairs are bulletproof? What about when you travel? What about when you entertain? How about when you interface, or when your children interface on social media? What are the steps you want to take to make sure the integrity of your financial affairs is protected. So that's going to be Thursday evening, November 7th, right here. So tonight's presentation, the theme of tonight is what's happening in the economy, and specifically with interest rates and the bond market. Back in the springtime, Frank Norman and I just got a sense from reading all the data points that we were reading that interest rates were beginning to move up, and we believe that'd be a prolonged move up. We were not certainly privy to how quickly rates would move up. Rates have moved up dramatically. When we were sitting, and briefing you in May, the rate on the 10-year Treasury was about 1.6%. It's just under 3% right now. So it's been, the month of June was the worst month in bonds since they've been keeping records. So we did our very best to be proactive. We spoke with many of you in early May, and we shortened up your bond portfolio. So we were moving you from long and intermediate duration managers to short duration managers using short, high-quality bonds. But I know that the concerns that you feel when you see the price of your bonds move up and down. So, it's been a great year in the stock market, but people that own bonds and portfolios see brackets, see some unrealized losses. So what do we make of that? What does that really mean, and what's the outlook for interest rates? Well, almost, 17 or 18 years ago, we brought in a speaker to help us communicate this topic as we saw rates moving again in the mid-90s. And Zane Brown helped us then and is helping us again tonight. Zane Brown is a 30-year veteran on Wall Street and a senior portfolio manager, senior economist with Lord Abbett, also a frequent speaker on CNBC, CNN, and quoted in the Wall Street Journal. And what I appreciate about Zane is he takes a topic that's often complicated, like bonds. Bonds are kind of funky the way they move with interest rates, and they're affected by happenings in the economy. He takes a very complex subject and brings it down to a level we can all understand and appreciate. So Zane, thank you for your help tonight. And I'm going to turn the presentation to Zane Brown, then we'll take questions at the end.
All right, terrific. This works. Good deal. That was easy enough. I feared we'd have squeaking and everything else and a lot of feedback. But it's great to be here. Thank you so much for sharing your evening and giving up what you otherwise would be doing. I think if this would have been Monday night, we would have a lot of empty chairs. But thank goodness it's Wednesday and it's not on Monday night when the Eagles are playing football. I don't usually get an opportunity to speak to people who actually have money invested. I did do that another time a little while ago, and I spoke to one person and I said something like, this must not be must-see TV night. And she said, well, it actually wasn't between you and TV. It was between you and the laundry. Oh. And I'm not sure I made the right decision yet. Oh. So I didn't talk to her afterwards. I was afraid she might have made the wrong decision coming and talking. But most of my opportunities to speak are not to actual people who have money in the market, but they're more to groups of advisors. So oftentimes they will have a retreat where they learn about new compliance, they learn about the economy, I talk a little bit about interest rates, but usually I'm known as the bond guy. They have dual tracks. There are different things to do during the day. And generally I get on not at a good time like now where, I still see, wide open eyes. I get on right after lunch, and that's when the food hangover starts to kick in, and I get what I call the bond nod, where people kind of catch themselves. I've seen that in church as well, so I know it's not exclusively the bond nod. But the other thing that happens is oftentimes, like I said, they have other things going on, and you get down the list and you say, oh, okay, we have lunch, and we have the bond guy, or golf. And that's not a very difficult decision for most people to make. But I actually did hear somebody one time say, gee, I always wanted to learn how to play golf. So oftentimes, hearing about fixed income isn't people's top priority. So hopefully we can keep it a little bit more interesting. My wife, unfortunately, once said to me, well, she's a psychologist, right? So she says to me, you ought to take responsibility for people falling asleep or leaving and not showing up. And of course, as a psychologist, she has to say, take responsibility, because, they either say you take responsibility or blame your mother. Well, she's a mother, so she can't say that, so it's my fault. I need to take responsibility, and so, of course, I said, yes, dear, what do you mean? And she said, well, I've heard you speak. Oh, now I'm in trouble. And I said, well, what exactly do you mean? She said, well, I've heard you speak, and you're boring, and you're ugly. I said, oh, I love you too, dear. Tell me about the boring part. She said, well, you're boring because in front of you, the stock guys get up there and they're all excited about new developments in biotechnology. They have, emerging market concepts that they can talk about. And there's always an opportunity somewhere in the stock market. And you get up there, what do you talk about? You talk about coupon and maturity, and it's just a bunch of numbers, and it's really boring. And basis point, what's a basis point anyway? I said, well, a basis point is how we measure return, and if you divide 1% by 100, that's a basis point, and we measure return in terms of basis points. And she says, well, if you have to divide percent by 100 to add meaning to your life, maybe you ought to try something else. I said, it's too late, dear. This is all I know. This is all I've done. I said, tell me about the ugly part. She said, well, ugly because, again, the equity guys, the stock guys get up there and they love a strong economy, and when they're rooting for, stronger growth and more people getting jobs, and that helps the economy, and there's greater profitability in companies, and they're all excited, and your idea of an ideal environment is a depression. And if you can't get a depression, you'll take a recession. I said, yeah, that's actually the case, because when you have an economic slowdown or a recession, we had the greatest recession we had since 1929 just recently. That was a great time for bonds, because what happened to your bond portfolios, right? As interest rates went down, because the Fed had to keep rates down, prices went up, and all of a sudden you had unforeseen profits in your bond portfolio. You were just supposed to get an income stream, and now you got profits. How great is this? So that's why sick people in bond land love higher unemployment. We love the fact that we have, a slowdown. And, heaven forbid we have a war, but for fixed income, that's pretty good. So, it's really kind of the opposite of what you might think. We're not really cheering for higher interest rates, right? Because that means prices will go down. We want a slow economy, so the Fed lowers interest rates. But what's the Fed done? They've actually gotten them down to zero. And then they went ahead and bought more bonds through something they called quantitative easing, right? They went out and bought longer term bonds, and they tried to bring longer term yields down. And of course, that pushed prices up. So it's really been fantasy land for any fixed income, any bond portfolio. And all of a sudden, beginning in just this past May, things started to turn around. Unbelievable that Greg and his team have been able to give you advance warning and let you know, hey, looks like things are turning here. We should get out of the way of higher rates. Because if you have long bonds and you have higher rates, they're going to be more volatile than shorter or intermediate term bonds in terms of reacting to that price. So it was the right thing to do. If you're going to have higher rates, you're going to have lower prices, you want to stay away from long-term, higher quality fixed income or higher quality bonds. So that was clearly the right thing to do. It really preserved your portfolios. And even if your portfolios did lose some of their value, you're a heck of a lot better off than if you'd stayed out longer. So first of all, that was a good thing to do. Second of all, there's all this talk now about tapering. And tapering really is kind of unwinding this quantitative easing program that the Fed adopted. So the Fed brought short rates down to zero, right? Couldn't do anything more there, so they said, well, we've got to bring longer rates down too. Maybe that will help out the economy, get the economy started. So they went out and spent a lot of money out here, and they did succeed in bringing rates down, and now they're talking about, okay, I think we're going to unwind that. We're going to taper off our enthusiasm for buying that. And everybody said, whoa, if you're going to do that, no, I don't want to own those things because you don't yield enough. And so nobody in May really wanted to go out and say, okay, Fed, if you're not going to buy 10-year treasuries at 1.6%, oh, can I have some, please? No, 1.6 wasn't enough. Now it's almost 3%, and some people would argue that's not enough either. The longer-term bond rose even more in yield and fell even more in price. So the question is this sustainable? Is it going to stay where it is? Could it get a little bit better? Or is it really going to get worse? And over the short run, this idea of tapering is supposed to be decided at the next Fed meeting later on this month, September 17th and 18th. And we'll get to hear from Ben Bernanke, and he'll be able to describe to us, hey, this is what we're going to do. And the fear is that, okay, he's going to start unwinding that and not make those purchases, and instead of making 85 billion, he'll make 65 billion. Well, first of all, 85 billion is a lot of money. You know, we throw that money around and we think, oh, that's a lot of money, but we don't really know how much $1 billion is, let alone 85. But 40 of that billion is purchasing mortgage-related securities, and that's helping to keep mortgages down, even though they've gone a little bit higher in yield too. The other 45 is buying longer-term Treasury securities. And the Fed's defined longer term as 6 years and longer. And it's hard for the Treasury to sell 10 and 30-year auctions whenever they go ahead and raise money in the 10 and 30-year market. There aren't a lot of people that want to step up, almost regardless of the yield, and say, oh yeah, I want some of that, because they know it could be volatile. So the Fed has been buying them, and the Fed has been spending so much money. You know, this 45 billion, every month since the beginning of the year, the Treasury has auctioned off, when you add the 10 and the 30 year together, a total of 36 billion a month. Well, essentially, the Fed spending 45 billion has had enough buying power to buy every 10-year and 30-year that the Treasury's auctioned and still have billions of dollars left over. It's no wonder that them threatening to say, I think we're going to not do that so much anymore, that people said, well, if you're not going to buy it, whoa, I'm stepping away from the market, I'm not going to buy it either, and prices started falling. So the question now is, do they deserve to be where they are right now? Are they going to fall more, or could they bounce back? And I think that the expectation is that they're going to slow down. That 85 will go down to 65. And so if, and we think this is likely, Bernanke, after his September 18th meeting, comes out and says, you know what, we realize that this has caused some consternation, and we're not going to be as aggressive as you fear. Instead of reducing 85 down to 65, we're just going to get down to 75 or so. And we're going to take it really slow. We told you a while ago that we'd be done by June of next year, and maybe instead of June of next year, maybe we'll be done by September. There's no hard line here. We're going to take our time, and we're going to do the right thing, and it will be a slow, unwinding process. And I think that's likely to calm the markets. So it could be that that 2.95 or 3% 10-year might actually go down in yield and up in price a little bit. I wouldn't buy it for that, because there are other considerations. But it could be that he calms the market enough and that we've overreacted a little bit for fear of what he might do or the Fed might do. But there's another consideration out there, and that is who's going to replace Ben Bernanke? Because his time's up in January, and Obama gets to designate his replacement. And essentially, he usually selects between 5 or 6 different people. It's really down to a 2-person race. That's Janet Yellen, who's currently the vice chair, and she was arguably the architect behind much of the policy that Bernanke has been implementing anyway. So she and Bernanke are really kind of joined at the hip, so to speak, in terms of how they believe things should be done. She will offer a continuation of existing policy that will be very calming to the market. But the other person is Larry Summers. A very controversial person, a very opinionated person, a very intelligent person, and a person very quick to tell you how intelligent he is. At least that's what many people say. He's never told that to me. But, so, oddly enough, when we talk to our contacts in Washington, it's at least 60% in favor of Larry Summers. Some people would say it's a done deal. Hey, he's not going with Janet Yellen. That would be the first woman chair of the Fed, and he'd like to get credit for that, but he really likes Larry because, one, Larry's really smart. 2, Larry Summers helped him out in 2008 when they were crafting TARP legislation and a rescue package for the economy. And so, 3, he knows that Larry has been very critical of Congress. And he's not shy when he has his criticism. He's very pointed in his comments, and he's not at all kind of politically correct in how he states his opinion. And so with him at the helm of the Fed, he would now have the Fed berating Congress for lack of stimulative fiscal policy and more aligned with Obama. And I think of Obama, who doesn't seem to have too many friends these days, except in France. But it doesn't seem to have too many friends, and so maybe a friend in the Fed would really help him in terms of encouraging Congress to do something a little bit more aggressive when it comes to helping out the economy. So I think that's probably the rationale. but we would expect that there would be kind of this go slow process in the meantime with Ben Bernanke, but at some point between mid-September and mid-October, we're likely to hear from Obama that it's going to be Larry Summers. Larry Summers has been very critical of quantitative easing. He said, I don't think it works. I don't think there's any benefit to it at all. I'm not sure why the Fed's spending all that money out there. It doesn't seem to me that it's helping out at all. I think it's a waste of time and a waste of the Fed's money. We shouldn't be doing it. So the fear would be on the day that Larry Summers is designated the heir apparent or nominated by Obama, you could have some turmoil in the markets. Because the fear would be you won't get a very slow, measured process of unwinding quantitative easing as you might expect under Ben Bernanke. But instead of what they call tapering, you'd get abandonment. Just forget about it. We don't need it anymore. In the next couple of months, we're just going to unwind it. That would spook the markets. That would be a fear that would go through fixed income, and you'd likely see yields go higher, not lower. And recall, we said it was a nice calm approach that Bernanke might take. Instead of 2.95 or 3%, yields might go down, prices go up. It's going to go in the opposite direction, we think, if it's Larry Summers, because people are going to fear what he might do. He doesn't have to do it, because it's going to be a long time before he gets approved by the Senate. The confirmation process is going to be really ugly. It's going to be arduous. It's going to be contentious. And Congress is going to say, what makes you think you can be chairman of the Fed? Right now, you're a consultant to Citibank. You're supposed to be, as chairman of the Fed, a regulator of financial institutions. How can you abandon your buddies at Citibank? You also have worked for a hedge fund. You've also worked for a venture capital firm. You've got all kinds